It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe, and we begin with Nigeria to the world, as Vice President Kashim Shettima has commissioned Nigeria's first ever sovereign pavilion at the World Economic Forum in Davos, describing the initiative as a clear statement of the country's renewed seriousness, readiness and resolve to actively shape global economic conversations. Speaking at the formal opening of Nigeria House at WEF 2026, Shettima says nations do not prosper in isolation, stressing that Nigeria's future growth depends on deliberate, structured engagement with the global economy, while noting that the pavilion was conceived as a whole-of-government platform led by the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, with senior leadership across investment, foreign affairs, energy, infrastructure, technology, climate and culture. Shettima emphasized that its true vitality must come from the private sector.
The message of this House is simple and deliberate. We are replicating on the global stage what His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has delivered at home in repositioning Nigeria's economy. We are here to engage the world from a position of strength. It's one of the world's largest emerging markets. Nigeria is a nation of over 242 million people today, with a median age of about 17 years. And the trajectory of global growth is facing Africa. And certainly, most certainly, Nigeria will make or mar that transition.
Well, still looking at reform, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, says Nigeria's recent macroeconomic reforms were beginning to deliver tangible results, reflecting improved stability and a gradually strengthening growth outlook. In its latest World Economic Outlook, titled Global Economy Steady Amid Divergent Forces, IMF upgraded Nigeria's growth projection to 4.4%, representing an upward revision of 0.2 percentage points from its October WEO. Economic growth was projected to moderate slightly to 4.1% in both 2026 and 2027, also marginally higher than earlier estimates, underscoring growing confidence in the reform trajectory. The latest projections emerged in the same day. Executive Director, Chief Executive Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Nonye Ayeni, disclosed that the country's non-oil export reached an all-time high of about $6.1 billion in 2025. IMF stated that the improved outlook came amid a broader reassessment of economic prospects across sub-Saharan Africa, where the fund also raised growth expectations. And now to security issues, as the Minister of Defense, retired General Christopher Musa, is talking tough. Retired General Musa says terrorists and bandits never honor peace agreements, describing such engagements as deceptive and harmful to national security. Speaking in an interview with the BBC Hausa service, Musa said negotiations with terrorists were never part of the federal government's non-kinetic strategies. He stressed that experience had shown that armed groups exploited peace deals to regroup and launch further attacks. Musa expressed concern that some state and local governments, as well as local communities, had continued to enter into negotiations with bandits despite repeated warnings from the federal government. According to him, such actions undermine coordinated efforts to end insecurity across the country. Musa urged state and local governments to immediately discontinue negotiations with terrorist groups, insisting that bandits lack the moral restraint to honor agreements. In other news, the former Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, has surrendered himself to the Department of State Services. This is following days of tension surrounding his stalled bail and heavy security presence at the Kuje Correctional Center in Abuja. Malami's decision comes after his continued detention despite meeting bail conditions. This triggered widespread attention and concern. His confinement had turned into a major security issue, with movements around the correctional facility tightly controlled for several days. The development followed a prolonged standoff at the prison, where security operatives reportedly prevented Malami's release even after a federal high court granted him bail. This situation created uncertainty and heightened tension within and outside the facility. Well, we're going to shift our attention to politics now as Kano State Governor Abba Yusuf on Monday evening met with President Bola Tinubu at the State House. Details of the meeting are yet to be disclosed, but it comes amid reports that Governor Yusuf is planning to defect from the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, to the governing All Progressives Congress, APC, a move delayed since earlier this month. The meeting was among the few that the president held on Monday following his return from the 2026 Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week. Rabiu Kwankwaso, former governor of Kano and Yusuf's political godfather, has publicly criticized the potential defection, describing it as an act of betrayal. Well, we wonder what his response would be. We've seen how relationships between godfather and godson get fractured and spill over into governance. It will be interesting to see how things play out in Kano.
So to a large extent, the negotiation is pretty much centered around who gets what in Kano. Don't forget, if whatever deal Abba Yusuf is doing does not carry along Ganduje, with Ganduje's own challenges he's having with the Kano state government, then there'll be no deal. And the possibility of, automatic ticket, that's what most of the governors would envisage when they get into the APC. But that can also be very challenging at a point in time. Do not forget that in the last election, Ganduje did float, what's his name now? Gawuna, against Abba Yusuf, and they went at it. And you will remember the merry-go-round around the court before Abba Yusuf was finally returned. So that possibility is also there. So I think going to President Tinubu is also the fine print. But I think the big ticket also will be who is that big person that is coming with Abba Yusuf? Because left for President Tinubu, and Abba Yusuf is more or less like a Kwankwaso on top of the deal. But there's also another counterclaim that they are trying to arrange an Obi Kwankwaso ticket on another side of it. So it's quite very hazy. As regards the IMF, yes, the IMF will keep saying, we are seeing the signs, but we are not seeing the signs in this economy. And let's say it pure and simple. You see, there are many theories that explain things around this. There's a dependency theory that talks about the fact that we're dependent on one product, and when we're dependent on one product, it leaves us short. If you have hazy price as regards that, then it leaves us short. You have an economy that cannot really bolster demand. You have an economy that the reforms has destroyed the purchasing power of that economy. And because of that, the people's lives are poor off. In 1981, when we renegotiated the new minimum wage, the new minimum wage was agreed at 125 naira. 125 naira in dollar terms then was about $195 to $205 if the dollar to the naira was 0.61. Today, a minimum wage is barely $50. As at that time, the minimum wage of an average Nigerian worker in 1981 could buy you multiple bags of rice, 3 to 4 bags of rice. I think a bag of rice was about 30 naira. Today, your minimum wage will pretty much be able to get just a bag of rice. At some point, when rice price even went up, your minimum wage couldn't buy you a bag of rice. What am I trying to bring out? There's a massive depletion in the purchasing power of an average Nigerian. That's one factor. Second factor is what I call the statistic gameplay. Most of the statistics being churned out by National Bureau of Statistics are things that don't relate to our lives. Example is the inflation numbers. We are saying, okay, inflation is about 15% after we rebased. Inflation is about 15%, but all of a sudden, interest rate is still pegged at about 27%, and interest rate is not coming down. What's the rule of thumb in economics? If inflation comes down, interest rate also should come down. Till today, businesses will get loans at over 30%. So you don't have a proper structured economy to be able to aid businesses in the first place. And once that happens, demand is skewed. If you go back to the Keynesian theory, they'll tell you about, growth in the economy through consumption. Where's the purchasing power of an average Nigerian? The other day, somebody put up the prices in 2020 and the prices today, and there was like a 500% increase in the prices. At the same time, the purchasing power of people have been degraded. All of those reforms have also brought hardship. They said, when they remove fuel subsidy, they will pass the money on to the state. We are not saying what the states are doing with the money. The federal government, all the same. We are not even meeting, revenue quotas. At the same time, we are borrowing so much more. The argument they made before now is that, once they remove the subsidy, borrowing will reduce because all the money. But today we are borrowing astronomically. We are taking loans everywhere. We are not seeing the impact. We are barely servicing our budgets. We're having 3-4 budget cycles. Take, for instance, 2025 budget are snowballed into 2026 now. So there are multiple problems as we speak on ground. And that's why you're not seeing real growth. But you see, all of this that the IMF keep talking about, the real problem is that all of these statistics we are looking at is not reflecting on the life of people. Just imagine, we are saying unemployment rate is about 4.8%. I mean, come off it in Nigeria. With the massive rate of unemployment and underemployment, but also because they've changed methodology. So we don't have statistics that truly reflect where we are and our face. We don't have statistics that shows the people what is truly happening. Yeah, we can tell all of these stories, but what's the effect on an average Nigerian? It's been more pain, it's more people being pushed into poverty, it's more people being pushed into penury. So, to a large extent, the true bellwether of the economy is not your big multilateral agencies around the world. It's really feeling the pulse of Nigerians. If Nigerian lives start to get better, we will all see it. As regards the case of bandits, I mean, the Minister of Defense is totally correct. Bandits, criminals, terrorists, whatever you call them, just use this peace deal to buy time. This is not the first time that they are going to break the peace deal. That's why I'm surprised at, states like Katsina. Katsina in the past, that these same criminals have broken the peace deal multiple times, are those that you are signing the same peace deal with, which they will break it again. So what's the way forward? We need to be able to have a government in place that can truly tackle insecurity, any means possible. Couple of ideas. Economic growth in that region is one of them. I keep talking about the story of Fernando de Soto. It might not necessarily work for Nigeria and the Shining Path rebel. The government then of Peru was having a big problem with the Shining Path rebel. Fernando de Soto said, the people that are supporting all these rebels in this area, all they need is property rights. The government democratized property rights. Those people stopped their support for the Shining Path rebel. It was easy. So if it's economic improvement, whatever we are going to do, you can call it kinetic or non-kinetic, about going apart from going straight at them, we need to be able to solve the problem once and for all. Because if you don't have that problem solved, it's going to impact a lot on your food production. Look at mango, for instance, and the places attacked. Look at Bokos. Those are places that really produce Irish potatoes and other food crops in this country. So I think the ball is in our courts. We need to play it quickly.
Okay, on the various subjects, what are the issues? Now, first, the opening of Nigeria House in Davos is called the Davos Promenade or Boulevard, some people say. 2 years ago, I visited that same boulevard in the company of Rutu Sudiri, where Nigeria was not represented there. But to have Nigeria there for the first time, showcasing investment opportunities in Nigeria, and the formal opening in that regard by Vice President Kashim Shettima, I think is a major development. 2 years ago, Vice President Kashim Shettima represented Nigeria. Last year, he also represented Nigeria, and this year again, he's there. Now, this will fall within the province of soft diplomacy, sending Nigeria to the world, opening Nigeria up to the world, and saying that these are opportunities that are available in Nigeria. Now, it's not just governments that are on that boulevard or promenade, as they call it. Very lovely place, particularly at night. There are also businesses there, all the big businesses of the world. And then, they just advertise their country. So I think in terms of, President Tinubu's objective of attracting foreign investment, that looks like a one-stop, platform on the occasion of the WEF this year to say to the outside world that these are opportunities that are available in Nigeria. However, I still make the point, beyond the fact that the Ministry of Agriculture was there, the MITI was there. MITI is the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Oduwole, and other ministers who were showcasing what is available in their several sectors. The question to ask is, where is the connection with the Nigerian embassy in Switzerland? Now, we have not, our ambassadors have been appointed, they've been nominated, they've been endorsed by the Senate. But you see, many of these foreign policy, foreign movement moves, foreign movement initiatives by the Tinubu administration, they cannot have concrete value if we do not have a funded, well-purposed, functioning embassy or mission, let's use another word, in most of these countries where these activities happen, because it's the mission, in that particular country that will follow up. MITI, Ministry of Agriculture, these are agencies of government that are far away, from the main center of the activity, even in terms of reporting, even in terms of recording. So I think that Nigeria has an obligation to take this idea of making our embassies functional. I said when ambassadors were nominated that it was coming a bit late in the day, because to even get the agreement would take about 7 months. You may not have any ambassador leaving these shores until maybe later this year. And then, of course, it will be election time. But they probably will be retained if and when President Tinubu gets the second time. But for sure, for starting point, I think having a Nigeria house at Davos is a good idea, considering that, this has to be sustained. Now, very quickly to General Musa, saying that negotiating with bandits and terrorists is counterproductive because it doesn't work. Now, look at during the Buhari administration. The Buhari administration made this idea of cutting, bandits and terrorists a major, agenda for fighting terrorism. The argument was that under UN protocols, there's disarmament, and then there's, rehabilitation and all of that. Some concept about, what the UN protocol says. And it was in that regard that the Buhari administration bought uniforms for repentant terrorists and bandits, as they call them. In fact, in one state of the federation, the state even organized wives for these terrorists and bandits, in the expectation that that would domesticate them. But what General Musa, who had served previously as the Chief of Defense Staff, is saying is that that strategy does not work, is that under this administration is not part of the framework for non-kinetic intervention. And that states like Katsina that are using that non-kinetic in their own definition approach, are sabotaging Nigeria. Because what they have seen is that it never works. That these terrorists, they just use this, surrender, in quotes, as some kind of excuse to launch fresh attacks. And I think that General Christopher Musa is in a good position to know, because this has been his lifetime, vocation. And I think it is important to say that the minister, General Musa, should go a step further. Not just at the level of engagement with recalcitrant states like Katsina, where the governor had even told us that some bandits had been freed on the order of the state, and that the courts had been asked to release bandits, because bandits had also released some persons that they abducted. Now, what General Musa is saying is that that is unacceptable. That's not the position of the government. So we should have, better intergovernmental, relations. Was it not even the same Katsina state government that told us that nobody should just criticize them on what they have done, and that they don't care? They will continue to negotiate with terrorists. Now, one state, one subunit cannot sabotage what the federal strategy is in terms of how to contain terrorism and banditry. So General Musa may have made this rhetorical statement in public on the occasion of a major military event. He should go a step further. And at that event where he spoke, one other thing that came out was the point about welfare. A certain publication complaining about the welfare for our military personnel in the battlefront. Now, the acting director of the Army Public Relations, Apollonia Anele, tried to debunk this. But the truth of the matter is that we have enough evidence that, in fact, our troops on the battlefront deserve to be better treated. And I think it's not just an observation, a social media publication that can just be waved away cavalierly. Now, IMF has been consistently supportive of President Tinubu's reform. There is nothing President Tinubu's government does that IMF will not say, oh, it's in the good interest of Nigeria. As recently as the rebasing of the inflation rate by the National Bureau of Statistics. IMF also came in and said it was a good move. But economists in Nigeria, Dr. Ayo Tereba, whom I spoke with, and I also think Dr. Muda Yusuf, CPP, have both said no. There's a miscalculation on the part of the Bureau of Statistics of Nigeria. And that, look, they just, messed up the data. So, but IMF has consistently said, oh, there will be growth. They now say 4.4% in 2026. I think they even mentioned 4.6, and that, it will reduce to 4.2 or 4.4% in 2027. Now, this is playing politics with data. You may say IMF resident representative is not playing politics, but the politics is that Nigerians are not seeing the effect of this data, whether it's rebased or reconfigured, or the methodology has been readopted or revised in line with international best practices, as the MBS says. We don't see the evidence. Life is harder today. The cost of this pen in 2022 is not what it is costing now in 2026. That's the basic common sense that people can find in that regard. As for Abubakar Malami, former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, who has been rearrested by the Department of State Services shortly after he had completed his bail conditions, met his bail conditions, and then he was arrested as he came out of Kuje prison. What we just asked for is fair hearing, justice, and not the victimization of everybody. Any person that is targeted by the state for whatever reason is guilty, is innocent until pronounced guilty by the courts. So there's the presumption of innocence in our laws. And Abubakar Malami, former AGF, is also entitled to that. He is not to be subjected to any form of victimization or persecution, even when we insist that nobody is above the laws of the land.
Absolutely. As I pick up, let me first pick up on economic news, linking it with the developments in Davos, where the Vice President, as he opened that beautiful Nigeria House, said that the Nigeria House is a response to the lapses of the past. Now, what did I take away from this? I took away from the fact that we are acknowledging that in the past things have gone wrong, especially when we look at the example of Japan last year, which was huge news and a massive scandal, that the Nigeria booth was, in essence, a shell. There was nothing there, that public funds have been expended to secure that space because these spaces are not free, and nothing had been done with it. So it's commendable to see that there has been a progression from that way of doing things, and now there's an attempt to ensure that there's some sort of order and a strong diplomatic face to Nigeria's presence. I like that he said that it will be private sector driven. However, while we're looking at it being private sector driven, have we gotten our house in order? Because we have to remember that in all that we are doing, we still don't have an industrial policy. Several developments are happening. Yes, the IMF is projecting growth and higher numbers and so forth. But what is really lying under the surface of this data? The lack of industrial policy, for example, if you juxtapose that to the growth figures and the estimates coming out, when you look at the nitty-gritty of the detail, because we're not really sure where we're going with agriculture, solid minerals, our non-oil revenue, which we continue to promote. So we had a policy that allowed for the import of food and agricultural produce. Now, there was a spike in that by 45%. Now, the farmers are decrying because they are unable to produce, because they're saying that nothing was done to reduce the price of inputs on their side. So our agricultural sector is currently, as much as it is contributing to GDP, it's under pressure because of the effect of imports. Now, because there's no cohesive industrial policy, we were unable to cushion our farmers while we're doing the stopgap measure of importing the food. Very quickly, I'll go to Kano State. Kano State is all about who has the political capital and who has the electoral value between Abba Yusuf and Kwankwaso, so to speak. Now, we know that in the last election, election, the major factor was the Ganduje factor. If you look at the results, in Kwankwaso's presidential election, he polled about 997,000 votes against Tinubu's 500,000. Abba Yusuf in the governorship election polled over 1 million votes against Gawuna's 890,000 votes. So if you're looking at it at the surface, it would appear as though Abba Yusuf has a higher political capital. But when you now look at the fact that there was a backing from Kwankwaso, there was a backing from Ganduje, like Rufai said, will Ganduje be, is Ganduje on course? Is he in agreement with Abba Yusuf? Also given the fact that we know that there are no automatic tickets for any governors in this coming election, as the APC has said, defecting governors will not get automatic tickets. Well, I hope we can unpack more of these issues further as our time is up.